There's a moment in every human life when pretending begins. It happens quietly, not with deceit, but with fear. A child once free to shout, laugh, cry, or fall apart without shame suddenly notices something new. Someone is watching. At first, that gaze is gentle. A parent, a teacher, a stranger smiling. But soon the gaze becomes judgment, approval, disapproval, expectation, and the child learns an ancient rule of survival. To be loved, you must perform. The mask is born the moment we realize that authenticity carries consequences, that who we are is not always who the world wants us to be. The child tries something simple, a smile. Even when they feel nothing inside, the smile earns affection, so they keep it. A small trick, harmless at first, until it becomes a habit. The smile becomes armor. The armor becomes identity. In time, the mask grows sophisticated. It learns to adapt, to mimic what is rewarded, to hide what is punished. You start to notice which parts of you the world claps for and which parts it quietly turns away from. And so, little by little, you edit yourself. You delete the inconvenient emotions, mute the raw edges, polish the surface until you gleam like a person. But somewhere beneath the polish, the real you still breathes, softer, quieter, almost forgotten. Psychologists call this the social self, the version of you shaped by what society reflects back. It's not false in the moral sense. It's adaptive, necessary. Without it, you couldn't belong. But the problem begins when adaptation becomes amputation, when you start cutting away parts of yourself to fit the costume. We tell ourselves it's maturity, that to grow up means to control impulses, hide vulnerability, manage impressions. And that's true to a degree. Civilization depends on it. But so does performance. And soon the line between maturity and masquerade blurs until you no longer know which one you're living. Think of the first time you lied about your feelings, not to deceive, but to survive. Maybe someone asked if you were okay, and you said, "I'm fine." You weren't. But the world rewards composure. It values masks more than honesty, because honesty is unpredictable, uncomfortable, human. Children learn this fast. They realize that adults flinch at truth. So they learn to smile through pain, to laugh when confused, to stay silent when afraid. The performance becomes second nature. It becomes so fluid that even the actor forgets they're acting. Every culture, every family, every friendship has its own stage, and every stage demands a costume. For some, it's politeness. For others, ambition. For many, it's silence. But the mask always comes with a trade. The more convincing it becomes, the harder it is to remove. And over time, it fuses to the skin. You start to mistake the mask for the face beneath. You begin to believe the performance, even when it hurts. And the strange thing is, the world applauds you for it. The better you pretend, the more you are loved. The more you hide, the more you are admired. Until one day you wake up inside a role that no longer fits. A character that has stolen your own name. The tragedy of the mask is not that it lies, but that it forgets. It forgets who it was meant to protect. It forgets the child that once played freely before the stage, before the applause, before the fear. And yet behind every mask, there's still a breath, a pulse, a faint, living truth that never went away. It waits patiently beneath the performance for the courage to be seen again. That is where our story begins.
Every morning, the world asks you a question, silently, politely, and without mercy. It asks, "Who will you be today?" You know the answer before you wake. You've rehearsed it for years. At work, you play the professional, composed, rational, articulate. At home, you shift into caretaker, sibling, partner, friend. Online, you wear another face, polished, curated, glowing under digital light. Each role has its own tone, its own costume, its own rules. And like a skilled actor, you change seamlessly between them. Not because you are dishonest, but because the world will not accept one version of you in every scene. Sociologists call this the presentation of self. The idea that our identities are like performances on an invisible stage, and life is made of constant costume changes. But somewhere between these changes, the actor begins to blur. You start to forget where the stage ends and where you begin. You learn how to read rooms, how to smile at the right time, laugh at the right jokes, conceal the wrong truths. You learn that vulnerability can be punished, and that sincerity, in excess, looks naive. So you become fluent in subtle dishonesty, polite lies, strategic silences, practiced smiles. You call it being social, but part of you knows it's survival. There's a peculiar exhaustion that comes from this constant adaptation, the fatigue of shifting selves. You go to bed at night not tired from the day's labor, but from the weight of the personas you carried. And sometimes, in the quiet of your room, you wonder if anyone has ever truly met you, or if they've only met your characters. The truth is the mask doesn't just hide, it also connects. Without it, society would collapse into chaos. We wear masks not only to protect ourselves, but to protect each other from the rawness of human emotion. We suppress the impulse to cry in meetings, to scream in traffic, to confess too soon. We create distance to maintain order. The mask is the price we pay for civilization. But the danger lies in permanence, because the more you play the role, the more the role begins to play you. Imagine a teacher who becomes so patient she forgets how to express anger. A leader who becomes so confident he forgets how to admit fear. A lover who becomes so selfless she forgets how to want. Each one is trapped not by society, but by their own performance. You start to sense the dissonance when silence feels heavier than words, when you catch your reflection mid-smile and feel a strange distance between your face and your feeling. That moment of alienation, that quiet unease, is the sound of the mask cracking. But the world doesn't like cracks. It rewards consistency. It gives promotions, likes, and admiration to those who never falter, never question, never break character. So we patch the cracks, we repaint the surface, we perform again. It's not hypocrisy, it's conditioning. Humans are born into scripts long before they can write their own lines. Culture gives us archetypes: the good child, the strong man, the caring woman, the obedient student, the charming friend. These archetypes are comforting because they make sense to others, but they are also cages that shrink the soul to fit expectation. We call this the social mirror, the idea that we only know ourselves through reflection in others. But what happens when every mirror shows a different version of you? You look into one and see the confident adult, into another the fragile child, into another still the stranger pretending to be both. The more you search, the less you find. Your image fractures into pieces, a mosaic of identities, none of which feel entirely yours.
There's a beautiful tragedy to this realization, that perhaps the real you is not a fixed face beneath the masks, but the space between them. The consciousness that moves fluidly from one role to another, aware of the act, but not trapped by it. Actors sometimes describe a strange sensation when the curtain falls, a brief vertigo, as if stepping off the edge of reality. For a moment, they forget who they are outside the character, and then slowly the self returns, shy, uncertain, real. That same vertigo happens to all of us when we drop our roles, when the performance ends and silence begins. In those moments, identity feels lighter. You breathe differently. You notice the small tremor in your voice that means you're finally telling the truth. But that truth is fragile. It can't survive under harsh light or loud applause. It only lives in quiet corners, in solitude, in art, in love, in grief. It lives in the spaces where masks are too heavy to wear. And yet, every morning the world asks again, "Who will you be today?" And again you answer, because the show must go on. But somewhere, deep within, a new awareness begins to grow. The knowledge that the role is not all there is, that the actor still exists beneath the costume, waiting, breathing, watching. There is a strange terror that lives quietly in every human heart, the fear of being seen too clearly. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It hides behind politeness, humor, confidence, and even love. But beneath every mask, there is a single trembling thought. If they saw me as I truly am, they would leave. This fear begins the moment the child learns that love can be withdrawn. Not lost forever, just pulled away like light fading from a room. One wrong word, one misplaced tear, one moment of too much truth, and warmth disappears. The child learns the most dangerous lesson of all. To stay loved, you must stay hidden. From then on, visibility becomes risk. Every honest expression feels like exposure. Every confession a potential wound. So you build walls of words, gestures, smiles. And behind those walls, you keep your truest self silent, waiting for safety that never quite arrives. Adults call this privacy. Psychologists call it defense. But really, it is fear dressed in reason, disguised as maturity. The fear of being seen is not irrational. It is ancient. In the earliest tribes, rejection meant death. To be cast out from the group was to lose fire, food, warmth, and safety. The brain still remembers. It doesn't know that modern loneliness kills more slowly. It only knows that exposure feels fatal. That's why the smallest humiliation can sting like a wound from centuries ago. You may notice how carefully you manage your self-image, how quickly you correct yourself mid-sentence, how you read faces for approval before you finish a thought. That small internal twitch, that tightening in the chest, is your ancient mind whispering, "Don't let them see." But what exactly are we afraid they'll see? Not the big sins or grand secrets. Usually it's something smaller, softer. The pettiness, the neediness, the small cruelties, the longing to be loved. The parts of us that feel too human, too unguarded, too raw to show. We believe that these parts make us unlovable, but paradoxically, they're the very pieces that make us real. Authenticity is always slightly embarrassing. That's how you know it's real. To be seen, truly, is not about being admired. It's about being known. And being known means surrendering control. It means giving someone else the power to misunderstand you. And that's terrifying. Because once you are seen,
you can no longer edit the version of yourself that lives in their mind. Most people would rather be loved for their mask than rejected for their truth, so they polish the mask until it shines bright enough to blind. They live entire lives behind that reflection, forgetting that the light is only on the surface. Underneath, the soul slowly dims. You can tell when someone is tired of pretending. It's in their silence after laughter, in the way their eyes drift away mid-conversation, in the half-second delay before they answer, "I'm fine." It's not deception, it's exhaustion. To be unseen is lonely, but to be seen and rejected feels like death. So we compromise. We show just enough to be liked, but not enough to be known. We curate ourselves, one filter at a time, until even we start to believe the illusion. The tragedy is that the very thing we fear, being seen, is the only thing that could set us free. Because only through being seen can we be loved, and only through love can we rest. But love that is earned by performance cannot soothe. It feeds the mask, not the soul. That's why praise feels fleeting, and comfort feels conditional. The applause fades, but the ache remains. At some point, we begin to sense the lie. We sense that every like, every compliment, every nod of approval is landing on the mask, not on us. And that realization is devastating, because the world loves a version of you that isn't real. And yet, you keep wearing it, because at least that version is safe. At least that version is loved. This is the quiet paradox of modern life. We crave connection, yet fear the exposure it requires. We want to be understood, yet hide the very things that would make understanding possible. We dream of intimacy, yet flinch from truth. In the end, we stand behind our masks, waving to each other through the glass. Everyone performing, everyone pretending, everyone waiting to be seen. And maybe the saddest part is no one knows who started pretending first. But the truth, the one the mind avoids, is that being seen is not a danger to survive, but a doorway to cross. It doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. When the fear is strong, remember this. The gaze that terrifies you might also be the one that finally sees you. Not as perfect, but as human. Not as flawless, but as alive. That is the moment the mask begins to tremble. Not because it's breaking, but because something beneath it is finally breathing again.
Pretending always starts as protection. It ends as prison. There's a quiet fatigue that builds over the years, not in the body, but in the soul. It's the tiredness of always being on, of watching your own words before they're spoken, of smiling through the ache and nodding through the noise. The exhaustion of being seen, but never known. You begin to notice small cracks in the act, moments when the mask slips, a sigh that lasts too long, a tremor in your voice, a flash of real sadness before the smile returns. And in that instant, the world looks at you differently. Not cruelly, just curiously, as if they've glimpsed something unscripted and they don't know what to do with it. So you rush to cover it up again, back to composure, back to your practiced self, because vulnerability to the performer feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. But every time you hide, you lose something. Not dramatically, piece by piece. You lose the rawness that makes life vivid. You lose the honesty that makes connection real. And most quietly, you lose the sound of your own voice. Because the more you speak in borrowed tones, the less you recognize the sound of truth. Psychologists call this self-alienation, a state where you become estranged from your own feelings.
where the line between authenticity and performance disappears. You no longer know whether you're acting or being. And sometimes the only sign of life left is the ache itself. Pretending has a cost, and it's paid in silence, in the empty spaces after conversations, in the loneliness that creeps in even when surrounded by people. You laugh, but it feels hollow. You succeed, but it feels weightless. You're loved, but something inside you whispers, "They don't know me." And that whisper is both grief and truth. Because they don't. They know the version of you that never makes mistakes, never stumbles, never cracks, the safe one, the pleasant one, the edited one. And maybe in a way you've trained them to love that version, because that's the only one you ever let them see. The longer you pretend, the lonelier you become. Not because people abandon you, but because the part of you that longs to be known has been exiled. You've built a cage so convincing that even you believe it's home. At first, the cage feels safe. It's predictable, polished, admired. But after a while, you start to feel the air thinning. You can't quite breathe right. You find yourself searching for reasons to feel alive again. Through work, through love, through distraction. But no matter how many hands hold you, it never reaches the part of you still hiding. There's a particular pain in being loved for a mask. It's like hearing applause for a song you didn't write. You smile, you bow, but the echo feels wrong. Because somewhere deep down you know, you've built your belonging on a performance, not on truth. And performances, no matter how perfect, always end. Sometimes the end comes quietly, a sudden breakdown, a tear you didn't plan to shed, a question that catches in your throat. Do they actually know me? Sometimes it comes violently, a collapse, a burnout, a decision you can't explain to anyone, not even yourself. Either way, it's the same ache, the moment your real self finally demands oxygen. When the mask begins to crack, it hurts. You think you're falling apart, but you're actually coming back to life. Because the body can only pretend for so long before it starts to rebel. Anxiety, fatigue, emptiness, these are not malfunctions. They are messages. They are your truth knocking on the door you've kept locked. You might call it depression. You might call it burnout. But sometimes it's simply this. You've been acting for too long, and the actor is starving. The cost of pretending is not that we fool the world. It's that we forget how to be real when we're finally alone. We lose the language of honesty. We forget how to say, "I don't know," or "I'm scared," or "I need help." We begin to treat vulnerability like a foreign tongue we no longer speak. And the longer we avoid it, the more the silence grows. Until one day, silence becomes unbearable. And the only thing left to do is tell the truth, even if no one claps for it. That's how awakening begins. Not with enlightenment, but with exhaustion. With the quiet decision to stop performing. With the simple, terrifying, beautiful act of being yourself, even when it feels like a risk. Because the greatest cost of pretending is not losing others' approval. It's losing your own reflection.
At first, the unmasking doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. You don't step into light, you stumble out of darkness. You don't feel brave, you feel naked. And for the first time in years, your own skin feels foreign. When you stop pretending, the silence hits you like a wave. All the noise you used to fill the void, the approval, the chatter, the careful performances disappears. And suddenly you hear the echo of yourself. Unfiltered, unrehearsed. It's strange at first, almost unbearable, because beneath all the layers of identity, what you find isn't clarity, it's chaos. All of the feelings you'd buried begin to resurface.
the anger you never expressed, the grief you postponed, the tenderness you never showed because it made you feel weak. They all come back, one by one, like ghosts asking to be recognized. It's tempting to put the mask back on, to retreat to what's familiar, predictable, controlled. But something inside you refuses. The body knows when truth has been spoken. It cannot unhear its own honesty. And so you begin again. Slowly. Awkwardly. Imperfectly. You start telling the truth in small ways. No, I'm not fine. Yes, that hurt. I don't know what I'm doing. Simple words, but they feel revolutionary. Every honest sentence is a crack in the armor, and through those cracks, something real begins to breathe. The first people you show your unmasked self to might not understand. Some will step back, startled by the rawness. Others will try to fix you, reshape you, repolish you. Because authenticity can be confronting. It reminds others of their own masks. But a rare few, will stay. They'll look at you, stripped of performance, and instead of flinching, they'll soften. Because they recognize it. Not your story, but your nakedness. The shared human truth beneath all costumes. I want to be seen. I want to be real. And in their gaze, something extraordinary happens. The fear that once ruled you begins to fade. You realize that being seen is not unbearable, it's intimate. That being known is not death, it's a rebirth. Authenticity doesn't roar, it whispers. It doesn't demand to be admired, it asks to be accepted. And when you begin to live from that place, your voice changes. It grows quieter but deeper. You no longer need to prove or perform. You just speak. You just are. The unmasking is not one dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small ones. Every time you choose honesty over performance, presence over perfection, truth over applause, you take another step towards yourself. There will be relapses. Days when you slip back into old roles. Nights when you miss the comfort of being liked. That's okay. Authenticity isn't a destination, it's a practice. It's the art of returning again and again to what is real. You'll start noticing beauty in the things that once frightened you. The trembling in your voice, the cracks in your confidence, the tears you no longer hide. You'll see that they don't make you weak, they make you whole. And something miraculous unfolds. The more real you become, the safer the world feels. Because reality, once faced, loses its sharpness. The things you feared, rejection, judgment, loneliness, begin to soften under the weight of truth. You realize that most people are too busy carrying their own masks to judge yours. It doesn't mean life gets easy. It means it gets honest. The applause might grow quieter, but the peace grows louder. You find that love feels different when it lands on your bare skin. Warmer, slower, heavier. It doesn't sparkle. it sinks in. And for the first time, you understand what freedom really is. It's not doing whatever you want. It's not becoming someone new. It's having nothing left to hide. The unmasking is not about tearing anything away. It's about remembering. Remembering who you were before the performance began, before the first role, before the first lie of composure. The real you was never lost, only covered. And truth, unlike masks, doesn't need maintenance. It simply waits. When you meet that version of yourself again, raw, messy, imperfect, you don't recognize them at first, but they recognize you. And they smile, quietly, as if to say, "Welcome back." There comes a day when you stop searching for the real you. Not because you found it, but because you finally understand there was never anything missing. The mask has fallen away, not with a shatter, but with a sigh. You no longer need to peel, to prove, to perform. You sit quietly, and the world sits quietly with you. For the first time, silence doesn't feel empty. It feels alive. You begin to see that the self is not a thing you uncover. It's the space you inhabit when you stop pretending. A field of awareness stretching beneath all your roles, beneath your laughter, your anger, your worry, your hope. That quiet space has always been there, patient, invisible, whole. It doesn't need to be impressive. It doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be noticed. And when you live from that space, life stops feeling like a performance. You still play roles: parent, friend, lover, worker. But you no longer confuse them with who you are. They become what they always were: temporary expressions of something much larger, like waves upon the sea. The world keeps asking, "Who are you?" And for once, you no longer need an answer. You smile, you breathe, you live. You let the question pass through you like wind through leaves. There is a sweetness in being ordinary, in not having to impress anyone, not even yourself. You start to notice small, exquisite things again. The rhythm of rain against the glass, the warmth of light on your hands, the sound of your own laughter, unfiltered, unplanned, real. And in those moments, something softens. You forgive yourself for all the pretending, all the fear, all the years spent chasing an image. You realize it was never about escaping the mask, but about learning to love the one who wore it. Because the mask was never your enemy. It was your first form of love. Your way of staying safe in a world that often confuses honesty with danger. It helped you survive long enough to outgrow it. And now, gently, you can let it rest. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with exhale. With the gentle recognition that nothing needs fixing, not even you. You were never broken, just hidden. And the truth beneath the hiding is simple, almost childlike. You are here. You are alive. You are enough. From here, life goes on, ordinary and luminous. You still play, you still fail, you still wear small masks when needed. But now you wear them consciously. They are tools, not cages, costumes for moments, not prisons for identity. You can put them on and you can take them off. That's all freedom ever was. Choice, awareness, presence. The more you rest in this stillness, the less you fear being seen. Because you finally understand. No one can see you completely, and that's all right. You are not meant to be captured. You are meant to be experienced, moment by moment. A changing constellation of thought and feeling and breath. And when someone truly sees you, not the mask, not the story, but the quiet behind your eyes, you feel no panic anymore. You simply nod, as if recognizing something ancient. Because in that gaze, you see them too, their own hidden self, trembling and brave and real. Two souls, unmasked for a moment, meeting without performance. That is love. Not fireworks, not promises. Just this, the gentle knowing between two people who have stopped pretending. And when the film of your life plays to its final scene, no one will remember the masks you wore. They'll remember the moments when you were present, when your laughter was unguarded, when your eyes didn't look away, when for a heartbeat, you were completely human. That's all we ever long for. Not perfection, not control. Just the quiet truth beneath the performance. And when you finally find that truth, you don't need to hold it. You just live it.